My dudes, it is a Wednesday, and when it is Wednesday, there is only one thing that needs doing, and that is returning once again to Velocity Lake, the theme park that I am building in Planet Coaster. And this episode is, first of all, episode 66. The Evil Emperor number from the greatest Star Wars film of all time. And we're going to be doing a few things. It's an episode of various bits and bobs. So we're finishing off a few little projects. I have a bit of a habit in Planet Coaster to start work on a project and then just get excited. I'm like a little dog. I just run off and do another thing. And I end up with like loads and loads of like unfinished projects. So today is going to be a lot of finishing off all of those unfinished projects. But we're also going to be doing a little bit of extension of the road infrastructure in this park. I mentioned when I did the commentary for, and I can't remember what episode this was, I'm very sorry, but in the episode in which we kind of built all of these backlot car parks, I believe it was part of the epic warehouse construction trilogy. I came to the realization whilst making the commentary over the footage, like until this point I didn't even notice the thing that was wrong, in that all of this is one way. So staff and heavy goods vehicles, etc., all have a way to get to the car parks back here, but then there's no way for them to get out because they'll be going, the only way for them to enter the arterial road system again is to go back where they came from and go up a slip road that takes them onto the wrong side of the A road, and it results in a very fiery death, I would imagine. So all of our staff, we have to get new staff every day, or, you know, they park their cars in the car park, and then that's it. That's where their car stays now. So not an ideal solution. So I want to try and come up with a way. We need to fix that, basically. So that's going to be what we're doing. That's going to be one of the things we do in this episode here. I believe we're also going to start work on improving the area around the hotel district in this park. Again, I built the hotel building. I built the station that serves the hotel. I built all the grounds around it. And then I just sort of abandoned it, and it's then left in an unfinished state. And it's always been a bit of a thorn in my side, a bit of a pain in my neck. It's just always been there, looking at me from the little hilltop in the corner of the park, laughing at me, mocking me. Well, no longer, my friends. Today, Matland says no. We're gonna fix it. And one of the ways we're going to fix it is create some sort of road that will enable staff to get to the car park, because I think if staff who work at the hotel, they need some way of getting there with their cars. We need a car park for hotel staff. Now, this is a cursed piece of footage just here. I started constructing like the foundation for the bridge by flattening out some of the terrain so we could get a nice smooth transition from road to bridge. And in the process, I accidentally cut off the water supply to Velocity Lake. So we are now in Velocity Crater, the cursed alternate reality in which the lake evaporates. This is Velocity Lake circa 2040, after all of the water on Earth goes away and evaporates. This is what it has. I think it was quite cool. That's why I decided to leave this footage in, because I think it's quite cool to kind of see, it's a different perspective of Velocity Lake. And you can see just how tall some of the bridges are, like that white suspension bridge in the foreground just there. It extends. It's quite a significant structure. It was a real feat of engineering. And you wouldn't have been able to tell that when I built it in the game, because I literally just cloned it from a different part of the park and just changed the little spires to make it look different and make it look like I put a bit of effort into it. So there we are. That was a nice little break in the footage just there. Anyway, now we can get back to the task at hand, which is adding a road for staff to get to the hotel car park. Now, I know technically they can at the moment, because there is that peripheral road that runs around the entire circumference of the park, but it's a really, really, really long road. So once staff get off the A road and need to get to work, they then have to basically circumnavigate the entire park. B, it's kind of designed for emergency service vehicles and stuff like that, and you know, indeed any other service vehicle. So it's very narrow, and it's not really like, cars could easily get jammed up in there, and then an actual vehicle that needs to get through quickly, it would get stuck. And C, it's very badly built. This is my fault. I take full responsibility, but it's very rough. It's very undulating. Like, it follows the terrain, which in Planet Coaster is very hard to get smooth. I thought I'd got the terrain nice and smooth, and then I placed the path and realized just how bumpy it was. And try as I might, I couldn't get it any smoother. So, unfortunately, the perimeter path of Velocity Lake is very, very rough. So I thought, you know what? let's not have staff use that. Let's give them a dedicated road that is A, smoother, better built, newer, so it's got that kind of, I don't know, new factor, and more importantly, it's shorter. It's a shorter drive. So once they get off the A road, they can immediately get on the road that takes them straight to the hotel. They haven't got to faff around driving through the warehouse district, getting in the way of heavy goods vehicles, stuff like that. They can just cut out all the nonsense and get there straight away. Now, as you can see, I built this barrier. In fact, I don't know how I got off that topic because I started talking about it and then I kind of got carried away. But, I mentioned that it's a kind of a giant one-way system, and so we need to fix that. Well, my temporary fix just there was to add a little gate just there so that cars could at least just exit this area by going into the main theme park's car park, which is connected to the road system in a sensible way. Or at least it will be. Like, we've got the actual exit road, and then we've got the car park. There's nothing between them, but it'll be a very trivial job of just connecting them up. So we've got all of the blueprints and foundations for a road system are there much more easily than what we'd have at the moment, which is we haven't really got enough space to do anything else. Like, we haven't got enough space to the south of the park to make another road for like staff to drive around again. So I'm like, what do we do? But we came up with a pretty nice solution, I think. So at the moment, we are now underneath the A road just here, constructing a little underpass. This will be the road that staff will use to get to the hotel complex. So I couldn't find a good way of doing this because they have to go under the highway. There is no way around it. And, the way that staff separate themselves from the guests is this junction right here. So if this forked to the left rather than forking to the right, and that's the junction, where the staff road splits from the main road, if it forked to the left, it'd be much easier just to have a little junction that just loops back onto this bit. But it forks to the right, unfortunately, which means we have to do this big convoluted system where it has to loop all the way back on itself, and it has to get underneath the A road just here to get on course for the hotel. So I kind of had to sort of squeeze it in this little gap between the slipway and the rest of the A road, but I think it worked pretty well. Like, it looks kind of narrow, but it is easily wide enough for the biggest vehicle in the game, which I believe is the dump truck. Cue people in the comments saying, actually, the aeroplane is the biggest vehicle in the game, but, biggest road vehicle in the game, I believe, is the dump truck, and that can easily fit. In fact, I think two of them can fit side by side, so there's more than enough room for cars. And indeed, trucks and stuff that need to service the hotel, like bringing in fresh linen, the whiskey delivery for the whiskey bar, all that good stuff. So, although the whiskey delivery will probably come via sailing ship along the river to Velocity Lake after being imported from wherever it is that we choose to import whiskey. I feel like I haven't really put enough thought into this, and I apologize, guys. I should have put more thought into the whiskey delivery infrastructure of Velocity Lake. I promise you I will fix this when we make our second park, but right now, I'm afraid this is how it's going to be. So, I decided to take the lazy approach for building this road just here by electing to not make it out of scenery pieces like the rest of the road just there. I'm just building it out of the tarmac path because it looks fine. It looks like a road. I'm just testing, making sure a fire truck can navigate all of the corners without being too long so it would cut the corner. It's very easy in this game to lose track of scale, so sometimes it's quite an easy mistake to make a curved piece of road that is far too tight for a truck to corner. Like, a car could make that corner, but a big articulated lorry, it would end up just sort of like cutting the corner because it's too long. So sometimes I like to take the fire truck or the dump truck or something like that and just sort of use the rotation tool and the move tool to effectively drive it along the road and just make sure that it can actually, navigate it safely. So the next thing we're going to do is make sure that we have enough headroom just here, and it turns out we don't, so we need to do some modification here. So I placed these fences just here to kind of act as a sort of ceiling. I thought it looked quite neat, and it would catch any debris coming down from the road itself, which I don't know how that would happen because the road is just a solid structure, but I guess there is that gap in between the slip road and the A road itself, so I guess there is some function to it. That's going to be the actual ceiling, but of course it's limited by what's above it, and in this case it's these big supporting beams just here, so we need to raise these up. These are the temple pieces from the Adventure Pack DLC, I believe, and they very, very, very quickly became some of my favorite pieces to work with in this game, purely because they are basically like normal building pieces, like walls, floors, roofs, etc. But unlike the vast majority of building pieces in this game, they're not locked to the grid. Like, they can be freely rotated and offset to whatever angle you want, which most building pieces you can't. The walls, they have to be, vertical, 90 degrees perpendicular to the ground. Roofs have to be completely flat. They can't be tilted. So they are pretty restricted. You can make nice boxes out of the building pieces, but after that, you kind of have to get creative using the non-grid bound pieces. It's very common in this game to see people building buildings out of like windows. Like windows in this game are separate pieces that you can just sort of stick onto surfaces like as a thing, like a sticker almost. So the windows, they look like windows, but the other side of the window pieces, for a lot of them at least, is just sort of empty wall. So like there's a window in this game for like a castle window, but the back of the castle window is just like smooth stone. So it's quite a common trick to build buildings out of the castle windows, just flipped the, in air quotes, wrong way round, so they just look like a wall surface. And it's a little trick. It's often referred to as just windows as walls, because that's what it is, and we're not very creative in this game. Ironically, a game about creating theme parks. I guess we just struggle with naming things. But yeah, the windows as wall trick is not something I've done too often in this game. I guess there's an argument to be made that I did use it quite heavily for the construction of the hotel, because I wanted a big glass structure, and then I guess logic would dictate that I'd build it out of windows. Another reason why a lot of people like building stuff using windows rather than the wall pieces in this game is because Planet Coaster's scale is massive. Like, if you place like a doorway, like look at the toilets in Planet Coaster. Like if you place a toilet block and then watch a guest enter the toilet, the actual door, like the hole in the wall that the guests walk through to get into the toilets, it's like 10 feet high. It's really, really high. Like it's much bigger than a toilet door should be. And the same goes for the wall pieces. The wall pieces are designed to fit around the stock shops, including the toilets. So everything is just a bit too big. The archways in this game are massive. The walls by default, these like standard, in air quotes again, standard height for the walls in this game is 4 meters, which when you think about it is really, really high for a single story wall. So it's quite common for people to just build custom heights using windows as walls, and you can get sort of slightly smaller scales. Or even another trick people do is they build the first story of buildings using the standard building pieces, but then the second and third, etc. stories they build using the windows as walls, so that the upper floors can be smaller. So it's effectively including forced perspective. It's a very common trick that theme parks do, where they build higher stories of buildings in increasingly smaller pieces and out of increasingly smaller components, and that gives the illusion that the building is much, much bigger than it is. The famous example is the Sleeping Beauty castle. I don't know, the Disneyland castle. You guys know what I'm talking about. That's built using forced perspective. So if you went all the way to the top of the Disneyland castle, you wouldn't be able to fit through the door. Like, it's got that big crow's nest tower with a little window, I guess, where Sleeping Beauty would. I don't know. I've not seen Sleeping Beauty, I don't think. So I don't know the plot or the lore behind the Disneyland castle, but you guys get it, right? There's a big window and a door at the top. Those are tiny. Like, I think maybe a human could fit through if they squat or if they're just really small, but it's a much, much smaller scale. But the flip side of that is that it makes the castle look much, much taller. I mean, there's a couple of like famous, like I'll put a picture on screen now just to show you guys. There are some really famous photos where these castles look ludicrously small when a person is standing next to them. And like, the Hogwarts land, whatever it's called, in the Universal parks, again, there's a big Hogwarts castle in them and it looks magnificent. It's colossal, but actually it's not. They build it on top of this big hill. And then they can just make it really small. And again, as you ascend the buildings, the windows and stuff, they get smaller and smaller and smaller to make it look like they're getting further and further away and are therefore part of a much bigger structure than they really are. So that's another reason why a lot of people use the windows as walls trick, because you can kind of implement that in Planet Coaster by using incrementally decreasing pieces in terms of their size. You can make buildings look slightly more grandiose, but at the same time a little bit more realistic in terms of how theme parks actually build their buildings. So there we are. I feel like that was a very long, drawn-out point. I just quickly paused my commentary just then to go and acquire a Google image for the forced perspective picture I used earlier, and I recall now, I've seen in the Google search suggestions that the big castle in Disneyland is called Cinderella's Castle, and I don't know how I forgot that, because I think I just referred to it as the Sleeping Beauty Castle, or the Beauty... I don't even remember what I called it now. My memory, it's not what it used to be, guys. I can't even tell you what it used to be because I've forgotten. So there we are. So yeah, Cinderella's Castle, before someone mentioned in the comments, actually it's called Cinderella's Castle, Matt. You should know that because you are a self-proclaimed theme park expert, which I'm not. The only theme park I really ever seem to talk about on this show, probably doing a little bit of overestimation of what this series is, but I've been talking about it a lot in this series, is Alton Towers. I very rarely talk about any other theme parks because I just don't know enough about them to really provide any sort of meaningful commentary. As if anything I say on these videos could be described as meaningful commentary, but you get the point, right? I'm not really all that familiar with like classic Disney princess lore and stuff, so you'll have to forgive me if I make the occasional slip up. Anyway, as you can see, construction of the road network is well underway. We kind of finished the little underpass just thing whilst I was talking about, I didn't know what I was talking about. I think I was talking about Disney castles still. But, you know, the road, we still need to put barriers in for a lot of it. And barriers, I always find them quite difficult to construct in this game because the obvious choice for a barrier is the vintage pack wooden fence because it just looks like a standard motorway barrier, at least how they look in the UK. But the problem with those pieces is that they're very long. Like when you try to do tight corners, like this corner just here, it's very hard to use that fence because it's so long you end up with a really angular looking barrier. Like you can kind of see the effect on that little part of the path just there that's now gone, but it's where this road joins the main road. We've got a little curved fence just there, and it's a bit angular relative to the curvature of the road. So I think we had to go with a different. I decided to go for a different barrier design for this this bit of road just here, so we can have slightly tighter corners that look a little bit more elegant. So as you can see, I'm sort of building a draft piece just here out of smaller sized parts. So this is much shorter in width compared to the vintage pack fence that I've been using as my crash barriers thus far. So we should be able to get nicer, cleaner looking corners. There shouldn't be as much crisscross. So slightly less angles and just a nicer look overall, building stuff out of this size piece. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just playing around with various different arrangements of scenery pieces to get a look that I'm happy with. And then again, I believe I'll be putting a lamp post on this segment as well, and then just duplicating it over and over and over, ending up with thousands of lamp posts, much more than we really need, because again, it means that we can... In fact, I don't think I mentioned this in this episode. I think I talked about it last episode, which I just finished recording before I started doing this one, but I said, so I'll just go over the point again. I tend to place these street lamps on the single segment like this. So if for some reason you've never seen any single Velocity Lake episode before this one, then I'm very sorry. They are much better than this, I promise. But I tend to build roadside structures like this, like barriers, out of just one segment, and then I just take that segment and then just clone it a bunch of times to get the entire structure. And I tend to have a street lamp on that single segment that I clone, which will mean that every single segment has a street lamp, which I don't want. But I want the street lamp to be in the same spot relative to the rest of the crash barrier for each segment that I want a street lamp on. And it's very hard to individually place the street lamps after the fact and make sure they're all exactly the same height and placed exactly the same way on the crash barrier. It's much easier to just have them automatically placed as you clone the segments and then just delete as appropriate once you've decided on a road layout you're happy with, rather than doing it the other way around where you build the entire thing and then place the street lamps on after it's all done. But yeah, I'm acutely aware that we are just over 18 minutes into this video, and I don't think there's that much left. Like, I think this is like a 25-minute video. I'm just going to zoom out on the Vegas timeline and get, oh yeah, it's about 25 minutes. And I think I might have accidentally lied to you guys earlier in the commentary when I said that we're going to do some work on the hotel area. Because I don't think we do. I think this might be it. This might be the last sort of major thing we do, is this roadside structure here. So I do apologize, but next episode, I promise, maybe kind of, don't quote me on that, that we'll be working on the hotel. But at least we have sort of got the ball rolling, right? We've started constructing the road that will get hotel staff up to the actual hotel grounds itself. So we did kind of fulfill that promise, but really I didn't, did I? So in a future episode, be it episode 67 or 68 or dare I say 69, but I don't think it's going to be this episode, basically. But here you can see me fulfilling the prophecy that I mentioned, where we're going to have way too many street lamps, and that's what's happening here. But again, do not fear, nothing has changed. I do still plan on deleting most of these street lamps once I've, placed the barrier along the entire length of the path just here. And again, it's a path but it's a road, you know? Like it's a path disguised as a road. Like there's guests aren't going to be walking down this thing, hopefully. And you know, it would be nice to have actual road pieces in this game. So when you place a road, it will just come, like, you know how you can place paths with an auto-generated fence or an auto-generated curb, etc. Like that just comes with the path. So as you place it, that follows it really beautifully. You don't have this sort of janky angular custom fence that I'm having to build here. So I guess it would be nice if this game included roads, especially because Frontier is quite in tune with their community, and they must know by now that so many players build road systems in this game. Hopefully, maybe in an upcoming Planet Coaster 2, they might implement some sort of road system, but they didn't for Planet Zoo, which is obviously the successor to Planet Coaster, so I'd say it's probably unlikely, which is a shame. I mentioned this a lot last episode, so I feel like I don't want to retread this same topic too heavily, but it would be nice to have some sort of, you know, custom road structure, or at least have something where you can have cars drive along it to make the park look a little bit more lived in. Like, one solution I really liked, actually, I saw Planet Coaster YouTuber Operator, I believe that's how it's pronounced, or Operator, something like that, he built a build quite recently, and it was like a Victorian steampunky factory, and there was a road outside it, and what he did for that was he built a road, I guess using paths. I'm not quite sure how he built the road itself, but then just below the road, clipped underneath it, is the car ride. I think he used the vintage cars, you know, the ones that look a bit like a Model T Ford, but that kind of car, like very, very old, turn of the century type of vehicle, and they're just driving along the track and it's automatic. So it does look like there's actual traffic going in front of the building, but of course the downside to that is that it's all single file. They all have the same gap in between. The gap between each car is exactly the same. It looks very artificial. They go very slowly, and of course the cars themselves are empty. So it's a bit naff, but it's an inelegant solution to an inelegant problem. So I guess you kind of got to play with the cards you're dealt with sometimes. But I guess it would be nice for a hypothetical Planet Coaster 2 to have some sort of road system, but I'm just not sure how they could implement it without, you know, basically making Cities Skylines in the process. Maybe it'd be cool for like the Planet Coaster devs and the Cities Skylines devs to team up. Maybe Planet Coaster devs can make a DLC for Cities Skylines, and Cities Skylines can make a DLC for Planet Coaster. This will never happen. This is a completely illogical business move, but it would be nice, you know, just have like maybe Planet Coaster 2, there's like a £40 add-on pack, like an expansion pack, a bit like what old expansion packs were for games before we got microtransactions. For like Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, for example, you had the base game, and then they added water parks. So you could build water parks, which is like it changed the game. So it was almost like a whole new game in its entirety. I think like I bought it secondhand because I was poor when I was only a child. So I believe I paid like £12 for the game, and then it was like £7 for the expansion pack. So it's substantially priced relative to the price of the actual game itself. And then later on, they added Roller Coaster Tycoon Wild, which added zoos. And again, you know, changed the game for a lot of people. For me, I was just happy that it added the extended coaster, which is the best roller coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. Don't at me, because you all agreed that it's right, and that was like enough of reason alone to buy the game, just for the buy the expansion pack, should I say, just for the extended coaster type. But you know, something like that, maybe, right? So a Planet Coaster 2, or even a Planet Coaster 1, although I know it's on like just bug support only, I think, at this point. But you know, like a DLC called, I don't know, Roads. But like a proper good, let's try and come up with a good name right now. Rocky Roads, Rally Cross, Star Wars. I don't know. It's really hard to come up with a name on the spot, but I'm sure the marketing team at Frontier can come up with something nice. Something like that. That would be nice to have some sort of actual inbuilt road system, but I do appreciate that this ultimately is a theme park builder game. Might be quite hard to implement. I did come up with other solutions last episode. Like I suggested doing something like Theme Park World, where the actual parks themselves are islands, and then just a boat arrives at a jetty every so often, just drops a load of guests off, and they can then walk to the park. Because at the moment, Planet Coaster is a bit naff. Like, a default map is just a big empty sandbox, and then in the corner somewhere, there's just a cave, and then inside the cave, there's a spawn point, and guests just appear out of this mystical cave. And I think it's at least something like Theme Park World I think would be better. Or, something like the other example I used was Evil Genius, where, you're on an island, so a helicopter can arrive, drop things off. There's a boat as well. I believe there's other things as well, but it's been so long since I played the game. Just something, I don't know, that isn't just guests appearing out of a cave in the side of the map. Would be nice. Anyway, I hope you find this nice, what we've done this episode. We've made really good progress on the road system. There's a few I's to dot, T's to cross, which I'm sure we'll be completing next episode. If you'd like to watch any of the previous 65 episodes, there's a link to the full playlist on the left-hand side of the screen. Right-hand side is a video chosen for you by YouTube's recommendation algorithms based on what you watch normally. So I hope you enjoy that one, whatever it is. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have an excellent Wednesday.